Imagine being born into a poor family with almost nothing, no expensive education, no rich parents, no powerful connections. At the age of just 13, you are forced to leave school and work long hours in a factory. Your job is exhausting, the pay is terrible, and every day you watch other people live lives you can only dream about. Now imagine that same boy eventually becoming one of the richest men in human history. This is the incredible story of Andrew Carnegie, a poor immigrant boy who started at the very bottom of society and built one of the largest business empires the world had ever seen. But Carnegie's story is not just about becoming rich. It is a story about hunger, ambition, sacrifice, opportunity, and one simple idea that changed his entire life: never stop learning. Andrew Carnegie was born in Scotland in 1835. His family was poor, and life was becoming harder every year. His father worked as a weaver, but new machines were slowly replacing traditional workers. The family's income disappeared, and eventually they made a difficult decision. They would leave everything behind. In 1848, when Andrew was only 12 years old, his family traveled across the Atlantic Ocean to America. They arrived with very little money and no guarantee that life would become better. America was supposed to be the land of opportunity, but opportunity did not come easily. Andrew's first years in America were difficult. His family struggled to survive, and at the age of 13, he had to start working. His first job was in a textile factory where he earned only a few dollars per week. For most people, this would have felt like the beginning of a life trapped in poverty. But Andrew saw something different. He saw the factory as a classroom. While other people accepted their situation, Andrew studied the world around him. He watched how businesses worked. He listened to successful people. He paid attention to new technology, and most importantly, he spent his free time learning. Andrew loved reading, but books were expensive. Fortunately, a wealthy local man opened his personal library to working boys. Andrew borrowed books whenever he could, reading about history, business, science, and successful people. Those books changed his life. Andrew later believed that knowledge was one of the most powerful weapons a poor person could possess. Then came his first big opportunity. Andrew got a job as a telegraph messenger. Every day he delivered messages to important businessmen, bankers, and government officials. Suddenly, the poor immigrant boy was entering a completely different world. He was meeting powerful people. He was learning how business worked. And he was beginning to understand something that would later make him incredibly rich. Your job can give you more than money. If you pay attention, it can give you knowledge, connections, and opportunities. Andrew worked harder than almost everyone around him. He learned to recognize important people. He memorized names. He became extremely good at his job. Eventually, he was promoted, and then promoted again. At a young age, Andrew became involved with the rapidly growing railroad industry. Railroads were transforming America. They connected cities, moved products, and created enormous fortunes. Andrew understood that he was standing in the middle of a historic opportunity. But he did not become rich simply by working for a salary. He started investing. This was one of the biggest turning points in his life. Whenever Andrew earned extra money, he looked for opportunities to put that money into growing businesses. Instead of spending everything he earned, he bought investments. One successful investment led to another, then another. Slowly, the poor boy who once worked in a factory was building something much bigger. But Andrew Carnegie was still not satisfied. He was watching the American economy change, and he saw the future: steel. At the time, America was growing at an incredible speed. Cities needed skyscrapers, railroads needed stronger tracks, factories needed machines, bridges needed stronger materials, and all of them needed steel.
Carnegie realized that whoever could produce huge amounts of high-quality steel at a lower cost could dominate the future. So he took a massive risk. He entered the steel business. This decision changed everything. Carnegie became obsessed with making steel production faster, cheaper, and more efficient. He constantly studied new technology. He invested in better factories and improved systems. But what made him truly dangerous was his obsession with efficiency. He wanted to know exactly where every dollar was going. He cut unnecessary costs. He improved production. He reinvested profits back into the business. While competitors were comfortable with success, Carnegie was constantly looking for ways to become stronger. And his empire grew. One factory became several. Several became dozens. Soon, Carnegie Steel was producing enormous amounts of steel for a rapidly expanding America. The poor immigrant who had once worked in a factory for almost nothing had become one of the most powerful businessmen on earth. But becoming rich did not mean his journey was over. In fact, Carnegie's greatest financial victory was still ahead. In 1901, he sold his steel company in one of the biggest business deals in history. The deal made Andrew Carnegie unbelievably wealthy. By today's standards, his fortune would be worth an enormous amount of money. The boy who had once worked in a factory for almost nothing had become one of the richest people on the world. But then, Carnegie did something unexpected. He started giving much of his fortune away. He believed that extreme wealth came with responsibility. Instead of simply leaving all his money to future generations, he used it to build libraries, universities, schools, and cultural institutions. Thousands of libraries were supported by Carnegie's money. He wanted ordinary people to have access to something that had changed his own life: knowledge. The poor boy who once could not afford books eventually helped millions of other people gain access to them. And perhaps that is the most powerful part of his story.
Andrew Carnegie did not begin with money. He began with curiosity. He did not have a powerful family. He built powerful connections. He did not have an expensive education. He educated himself. He did not wait for the perfect opportunity. He learned to recognize opportunities that other people ignored. Of course, Carnegie's career was not perfect. His business methods were often extremely aggressive, and his legacy remains complicated. But his rise from poverty to unimaginable wealth remains one of the most extraordinary stories in business history. His life teaches us something important. Being born poor does not automatically decide where your story ends. Your starting point may be outside your control, but what you learn, what risks you take, how hard you work, and whether you continue improving can completely change the direction of your life. Andrew Carnegie arrived in America as a poor immigrant boy with almost nothing. He worked in factories, he delivered telegrams, he studied when others were resting, he invested when others were spending, and when he saw the future coming, he had the courage to bet everything on it. That poor boy eventually built one of the greatest business empires the world had ever seen. So the next time you feel like you are starting too late, remember Andrew Carnegie. He did not start rich. He did not start powerful. He did not start with advantages. But he started. And sometimes that is the difference between an ordinary life and an extraordinary one. Because your current situation is not your final destination. Your story is still being written. And maybe, just maybe, the person you are today is only the beginning of the person you could become tomorrow.